everyone. If we could have everyone take their seats, we're going to get started. I'd like to welcome everyone to our Berryessa Citizens Advisory Council monthly meeting. We are starting at 7:03 p.m. I'm Dr. Roxanne Fuentes, the superintendent for the Berryessa Union School District, as well as the current president for BCAC. So welcome to our meeting. We have a very important guest today, our lovely City of San Jose Mayor, who's going to be doing his budget town hall. So we want to move through some of our immediate portions of the agenda. This evening, just out of respect of time for the budget conversation, we do have our law enforcement partners here to share with you some updates. We do ask everyone to refrain from asking questions this evening, so that way we could move on to the next portion of our meeting. So to begin, I'd like to welcome our San Jose PD captain. Welcome.
Thank you guys for having us today. It's going to be really quick. So total for the past month, we had a total 650 calls, and that's 1 through 6s. And out of 650 calls, 172 of those calls were patrol calls for service, where our officers are proactively patrolling those areas. And the other ones were related to traffic, where our officers are issuing parking citations, issuing traffic citations. So nearly a third of the calls for service that were out here occurring in this area were due to proactivity and also to community engagement. As I was explaining to some of the community members earlier, there were no major incidents that happened in the area. And we attribute that to two things. One is community engagement, so we definitely appreciate that part of it. And the second part is the proactive nature of our officers in this area. The officers that are coming out here on a daily basis are proactively addressing many of the concerns that the community members are sending to the council member's office, or getting through emails or through flag downs. Nobody knows this neighborhood more than you. The more that we engage with the men and women that are out patrolling the streets, the more that they understand the specific concerns to this community organization. So with that being said, I'll pass it on to Captain Bradford from the CHP. Thank you.
All right, I'm going to be really quick in honor of the mayor's time and your time with him. I brought an officer here to talk tonight, but I sent him home. There's more important things to talk about tonight with the mayor here. Just two things for San Jose CHP. Statewide, I talked about it a few months ago, we do now have body cams statewide. We're a large agency, over 7,000 officers, so you can imagine it takes a lot of money, a lot of resources to finally get those. So if you see us out in the freeways or the unincorporated roads, you will now see body cam. And the biggest thing in the news right now, if you've been watching the news, is our unmarked, or I should say subdued marked Dodge Durango patrol vehicles. Our department just released 25 of those statewide, and San Jose CHP did receive one, so we have a silver one. So if you see it out in the freeway, its main goal is to enforce those aggressive drivers. Naturally, when people drive recklessly and they see us on the freeway in the marked cars, they slow down. So the point of this vehicle is to catch those drivers driving recklessly, and to make them think once or twice driving reckless, like, hey, there might be a Dodge Durango out there. So I will bring that one of these months for those that come here month after month. I'm here every month. I will bring it in the parking lot one of these months. Tonight we did not bring it, and the mayor's here, so and I'll take any questions on the next meeting that I'm here. All right, thank you, everyone.
Again, if we can just show our thanks to Captain Zuniga and Captain Bradford. We appreciate their commitment to coming out to our meetings each month and giving us a safety update. So next, we have our very special guest who will be here to talk about the City of San Jose's budget. Let's give a warm welcome to Mayor Matt Mahan.
Good evening, everyone. I didn't mean to scare away our CHP officer. That's never my intention, Captain. I'm sorry about that. Thank you to both of our captains for their reports and the work they and their teams do every day to make our community safer. I really appreciate the partnership. Want to thank Dr. Fuentes for the kind introduction and invitation. Also saw a number of community leaders, and I'm sure I'll miss folks, but I do want to thank Director Dick Santos, Linda Locke, Sharon Root, and Ty Greaves, all for the work we do together. I know there are other active board members, and just want to thank all of them for being here. I think I also saw Mike Kraus wandering around, and so you guys are lucky in District 4 to have so many active community leaders who really care and create forums like this to be connected and to be civically engaged. Before I jump in, I wanted to invite your council member. We're joined by Council Member David Cohen. I wanted to ask him if he wanted to share a few thoughts, and then I'm going to dive into the budget presentation and do some Q&A and do my best to keep us on schedule. Council member.
All right, well, it won't take too long since I know you're all here to listen to the mayor and see an overview of our council's budget that we're discussing this year. The city has, for those of you who haven't ever seen them, we get 2 5-inch thick binders which have every page of the budget in them that we review and prepare throughout the spring. I've had the pleasure of being in the group with the mayor of 4 council members plus the mayor for the last couple of years as we prepare that book and we write the message that goes out to the council in March that kicks off the process. We as a council are nearly entirely aligned on all of the budgetary items and how we're going to spend our money in the city going forward. We have certainly some big issues that we're dealing with and the big concerns of the community: homelessness, housing, public safety, and cleanliness. We all agree on that, and we're putting a lot of resources into those things. I also have interest in making sure we protect the community assets that we have. This active community center, which is one of the busiest in the city of San Jose, our youth center, our library, and making sure that we have those continue to provide service up to 7 days a week in the district, and across the city. So I'm focused on those services as well, including my focus on making sure that we continue to be a leader in the environmental front in the city of San Jose. So you're going to see a presentation tonight that dives into some of the details. There's a couple of policy issues as well that will be talked about. We're not completely aligned on all of those, but when it comes to how we're going to spend our dollars, I believe that we are, and we're going to have another month just to make sure you understand the process. The mayor's been having one of these in each of the districts in the city. I don't know how many you've done. This is probably the 7th or so, I think, at this point. And this is your chance to say what is important to you, what jumps out to you as important ways to spend our money in the city, what suggestions you have for improvements locally. And then the budget will come back. We'll have a public hearing at the council chambers on Monday night, June 9th. And the budget itself will be discussed and voted on by the council on June 10th with all of the input of various council offices of what they want locally added to the budget, and then finally adopted as a final budget on June 17th. The process works actually pretty smoothly here in the city of San Jose. So without further ado, Mayor Mahan.
All right. Thanks, council member. Appreciate it. Thanks, council member. Appreciate you being here. I tend to move around a lot, so I'm going to take off my jacket here. Otherwise, I'll be breaking a sweat. All right. Oh, and a handheld mic. Okay. Let's see. That's not going to interfere? Okay. Wow. Sophisticated. All right. That way I can look at the screen. Thank you, Stephen. Excellent. All right. Well, thank you for having me. And as the council member mentioned, the budget book, which is extremely detailed, we actually do know where every single dollar goes, when it's spent, and all of that. It's over 1,000 pages. I am not even going to skim the surface of everything that's in there, but as was mentioned, we're toward the middle of the process now. We're doing community town halls, budget study sessions at City Hall, and we're mostly focused in on what are more like discretionary dollars, our general fund, which is where police, fire, parks, some of our library funding, some of our road funding, but certainly not all of it. But really those core city services. We also run an airport, wastewater treatment facility, San Jose Energy, but those city enterprises are fee-funded. So while they're important and we have oversight and we give feedback, our more intense debates tend to be over city policies and services where there are trade-offs that we can make. We can choose how to spend those dollars and really shape service delivery. So Councilmember mentioned we'll have our final vote in June, and then our fiscal year starts July 1. So let me start with a little bit of just what we're seeing in the economy. And I start there. I realize we've got a camera going here. Maybe I should stand over here. I start with this because our city budget, the tax revenue we get at the city, is downstream of the economy. The economy is doing well. We have more revenue to spend on city services. Kind of an obvious point. There are some areas where we're seeing some real signs of life, some growth, data centers being the big one. And just to put it in perspective, one new data center in the ground, depending on the size of the data center, generates about $3 to $6 million worth of net revenue that we can use for police, fires, parks, roads, libraries, core city services. It's a big deal. And historically, most of them have been built over in Santa Clara because they have cheaper power than we do. But we are working very hard to be a city that can attract investment, bring that tax base here so we can provide more services. And you'll see a little more about why that's important in just a moment. I also highlight the experience economy. We're seeing downtown, in West San Jose, out around Valley Fair, Santana Row, even our other malls are nightlife, restaurants, retail has been more resilient than we expected and has bounced back quite well from the pandemic, which is a bright spot. Big challenges, and there are many, but I'll just list two. One is office vacancies remain persistently high, over 30% in a couple of our submarkets, downtown and airport. That means properties getting reassessed and less revenue ultimately coming to the city. There's also, I don't need to tell you, just read the paper any given day or watch the news, there is a lot of uncertainty right now about policies coming out of Washington, whether or not federal funds may be withheld, and that's something we're watching very closely as well. So that's kind of macro, if you will, big picture, just a couple of big trends I wanted to highlight. And in the Q&A, I'm happy to go deeper into any of this. In terms of the fiscal outlook, so the city budget, at this moment, we are still with about $6.5 million left to resolve of a shortfall that started off closer to nearly 50 million, then was revised down a little bit. And then based on council's direction in the March message, we're estimating there's still about $6.5 million worth of trade-offs we need to make. We are trying, what you need to know here for this year is we don't anticipate layoffs or major service reductions, but there will be some cuts, some consolidation, and some reassignment of city workers. It's pretty minimal, but I am cautioning that we're still projecting an additional $50 million deficit next year. And a lot of what's happening here is we're seeing revenue growth slow down. I hate to sound so technical about this, but it is a budget. So there's revenue and then there's spending. Revenue's slowing. We actually had 2 quarters of sales tax revenue that was actually down compared year over year. But our expenses are fairly locked in. Our biggest line item, of course, is our people power. We employ about 7,000 employees. It's a very high cost of living area, and people expect cost of living increases and raises every year, and we're seeing our costs go up a little bit more than our revenues, and we're starting to open up a bit of a deficit here. So we have to manage this really carefully. Let me give you a little bit of context on the city's fiscal situation before we get into some specifics. I always try to highlight this because it informs, to me, a little bit of our history, but more importantly, where we go as a city. This is property and sales tax revenue to San Jose on a per capita, or essentially a per person basis. It's a lot lower than our neighbors. Anybody know why? I heard Prop 13, I heard things that are related, but fundamentally, it's largely due to our ratio of jobs and housing, largely. Now, there's some caveats here. Prop 13 is relevant. people tend to stay in a home longer than businesses tend to keep their build. Businesses will rehab and expand and redevelop and sell properties, and it provides more tax base. B2B sales also generates a lot of sales tax revenue. A big chunk of that Cupertino number is literally just due to Apple. Literally one company. So it varies. It's not the exact same story in every city, but for the most part, our neighbors have more jobs, more businesses relative to their population. And those employment lands tend to generate a lot of revenue and don't demand a lot of services. Residential tends to be the opposite. So that's not to say we shouldn't build housing. In fact, we need housing, but it is an argument for protecting employment lands, attracting more employers and startups and supporting small businesses, not just converting our employment land to more residential. And when we do build more residential, trying really hard to build up near transit and in downtown and build more density where it makes sense near infrastructure so that we have more people in a given square block, if you will, a given acre paying into the system versus the services that it costs us. So I know this is very technical and a lot of numbers, but it's just, it is the context in which we exist, and it's the reason you might have higher service levels in a neighboring city. It's also worth, just for your context, knowing about 17% of our general fund every year, right now about $366 million out of a $1.6 million general fund, comes off the top every year to pay for our unfunded pension liabilities. So we spent years of committing to certain benefits in retirement for city employees that were earned by those workers, but not properly covered through payments. And the estimates we were making around returns on investment were wildly optimistic. And in my view, some folks, at the time at least, sort of kicked the can down the road. And finally, these things come home to roost, as they say. The chickens come home to roost. So we are paying that off. Thanks to the community's support for pension reform, we are on a glide path to paying off most of that accumulated debt by the early 2040s. And for the next council, I don't know that this will help me or Councilmember Cohen much, but in about, I don't know, 5, 6 years, you're going to start to see the amount of money, and particularly as a share of the general fund, really start to come down. So every year we will incrementally have more money for services, but it's a long time to pay off some essentially poor fiscal management. Okay, so what does all that mean? Well, I talked about the implications for land use and needing jobs. I think it also means, and I made this case last year, we really don't have the luxury of trying to be everything to everyone. So to the councilor's point, we want to protect core community assets that we all care a lot about, parks and libraries and trails and after-school programs. We'd love to have a lot more of those. The reality is today, having more of those would mean literally trading it off with police officers and firefighters who are already understaffed. So what do? Well, we need a strategy that has the most impact on the things that affect the most of us the most, right? The things that are most impactful. I didn't say that well, but we need to be focused and prioritize the most foundational issues. We need to do the things that are most likely to grow the tax base so we have more revenue to spend on services so that over time, as we get our house in order, we will naturally have a growing economy, growing tax base, and more money for all of the city services we want. And what the council has been able to get consensus around is that these are the 5 most foundational issues. Addressing the immediate crisis of unsheltered homelessness, 5,000 people living outside, give or take. Clean, beautiful neighborhoods, and that includes everything from graffiti abatement to planting trees. Your district, your council have been a real leader on aggressively planting trees, which is great. So clean, beautiful neighborhoods for all. Investing in community safety, which isn't just police officers, but police and fire are our main expenditure there. But of course, after-school programs, focusing on at-risk youth, catching people who are repeat offenders for graffiti and having them do restitution and letting them paint a community mural. There's a lot of elements to this. Growing the economy, that's the tax base issue, which I'll get into. I'll get into each of these. And then, of course, we do need more housing. Even though we are housing rich and jobs poor, we know regionally we have an economy that relies on us being able to add housing where it makes sense for a growing workforce. And I think we all want our kids and grandkids to be able to live near us. So those are the big priorities. So I'm going to go into a little more detail on each and then stop for questions. And I apologize in advance. There's a lot of content here. I'm going kind of fast. I just want to get to your questions and we can go deeper into any of these. The general strategy we're taking is to ramp up shelter options that are faster and more cost-effective today, with an eye toward better stabilizing folks, preventing as much chronic homelessness as we can, because it's very expensive and difficult to address after we've left someone out on the streets for years on end. And then over time, try to actually convert some of that, such as the motels, into long-term permanent housing as we have the dollars to do it. And ideally, we have fewer people on the streets who need those places. So we are scaling up shelter to meet the immediate need. We're continuing to chip away at affordable housing. And I'll have more to say, but here's some examples of the types of solutions we've been investing in. This year, we are, with our dollars, making a historic investment in expanding interim housing and shelter. We're adding about 1,400 beds this year. That's more than any other city on the West Coast, which I know will come with a lot of questions, but we're making a big play there, a big effort to make sure there are alternatives. Some of the types of solutions, I won't, in the interest of time, go into a lot of detail. The two main strategies are modular units and converted motels. By volume, those are the most, and what they have in common is they offer people an individual room with a door that locks, often a private bathroom, on-site security, of course, consistent access to sanitation, something most people on our streets do not have, 3 meals a day, and a case manager to help them come up with their own plan for accessing services and moving towards something more permanent. And this is one of the policy proposals, and council directed in March that we further explore this. We've been having a lot of conversations with city attorney, city manager, police chief, as well as county counterparts at a meeting last week with all the county leadership, including the Office of Behavioral Health, Office of Supportive Housing, the sheriff, the DA, and their teams. We had a big group at City Hall. And the proposal here is to, first and foremost, build shelter and try to get people indoors. Second, when someone is repeatedly refusing shelter, to do our best to intervene to get them into treatment is the goal. The idea is to petition the behavioral health courts to enroll them in a drug court or mental health court if they're repeatedly saying no to coming indoors. We also do have, as we start to do more abatements and more engagement, there's also a portion of folks out there, a very small proportion, who are out on outstanding felony warrants and end up getting a one-way trip to the county jail. So there's a spectrum. Most people want shelter, need help, and it's mostly an economic barrier, a lack of affordable housing. Some people have deeper behavioral health issues and need treatment, and sometimes, frankly, need to be compelled to get treatment. It's just the reality with the state of meth and fentanyl, which are literally 50 times more addictive than heroin was in the 80s, believe it or not. And then we do also have the kind of buildup of, from the pandemic, we had over 50% of people arrested fail to appear in court for quite a few years. And so we got a lot of different issues out there to grapple with. Happy to go deeper into those. We're also continuing to invest in prevention. We invest in a countywide system of short-term cash assistance to keep people in their apartments. We're testing something called Homeward Bound, which goes straight to the streets and asks people the question, do you have a friend or family member who could take you in, who we can help connect you with, rather than having to wait to build a new apartment or modular unit or whatever it might be, and then having some money to help facilitate family reconnection when possible. And then I'm a big believer in this. I'd like to put more money into it. We don't particularly have it, but we are working with Goodwill to provide job training options for anyone in our interim housing system, and they are working with us to expand that a bit this year. Okay, it's a little bit on homelessness. Cleaning up our streets. Good news and bad news. Good news is your city workers are working really hard on your behalf. They're picking up a lot of trash and covering up a lot of graffiti, and you all are great about coming out and volunteering. Bad news, the cost of this and the volume is going up double digits every year. We're also investing quite a bit in education, and there's more we can do there. But we are learning that we're going to have to do a bit more enforcement and really set expectations and create more accountability on our streets. So one is code of conduct, which is really focused on tent and vehicle encampments, making sure people are bagging their trash, not building sprawling permanent encampments. We have a rule that you're supposed to keep your encampment between 12 by 12 feet. Really just engaging folks, letting them know what our expectations and rules are, and then prioritizing those encampments that violate our code of conduct for faster abatement and more accountability, because it becomes very costly, literally can be hundreds of thousands of dollars to clean up these permanent encampments that have had very little management. We're also working, I want to thank Senator Dave Cortese for being a partner on this. I did not run for office thinking I was going to be talking about shopping carts, let me tell you. But we lose over 2,000 shopping carts per year in the city of San Jose, all of which become abandoned on our streets. I have personally, as I'm sure the council member has, I have fished dozens of them out of our waterways. We need to get upstream of this. The efforts we're making both at a city and state level, it really focused on incentivizing retailers to invest in loss prevention. The dirty secret is these mass-produced carts cost about $150 a piece to replace. It's kind of a cost of doing business. There's not a lot of incentive to invest in loss prevention, but then we pay the price downstream of that, and the environment does. And so being smarter about regulating those. We're also doing a lot with, I think our CHP captain had to go, but he's been on a few calls with our city staff and our team lately. We're doing a lot to partner with Caltrans to hold them accountable for maintaining their public right-of-way. I know many of you have yelled at me and probably the council member on graffiti and blight on our freeways. We're seeing more responsiveness. I could use your help, though, in messaging the Caltrans District 4, that's our district, that's the Bay Area, on this concept of deterrence. They're still a little resistant to the idea that we should put a deterrent like that. That's actually from our city. We have one or two of these in the city. I'm advocating that on these overpasses, we do something like that on all of them. But we are doing more to partner with CHP to do some sting operations for those hotspots that get graffitied every single week, and testing some new technology with Caltrans. We're also focused on negligent property owners, particularly in downtown, but we'll be interested to hear about any in District 4 who need a little more attention. We have some good actors and some bad actors. So this one was a bad actor for many years. Blighted building, not maintained, very little attempt to lease it out. We went to the property owner and she was responsive. She said, okay, I know you're frustrated. I know you're going to start finding me. In my opinion, we let it go way too many years. But she worked with us and we helped her, Downtown Association helped her to paint her building, put it up for lease, and actually lease it out. She has a tenant now on a very prominent corner downtown because she was willing to engage with us. A couple properties to the right where I have literally personally tried calling the property owner multiple times, gotten no response. On one, we have maxed out the city's fines to our allowable limit. So we are now working with our city attorney to increase the accountability and pursue receivership. On one property, we're even looking at eminent domain, because if it goes a decade or more and it's dragging down the whole neighborhood and a property owner who sometimes is literally a multi-billion-dollar corporation doesn't care, you all deserve better, and we should be moving faster to hold them accountable. Okay, community safety, we're halfway there. In fact, a little more than halfway. Good news, we are a lot safer on a per capita basis than many of our neighboring cities. Well done to all of you and PD and all the partners who make this possible. Of course, if you're a victim of crime, it doesn't make much of a difference. I'd also note there's a lot going on out there that makes people feel unsafe, that feels disorderly, that may or may not be explicitly a crime. We don't necessarily consider accumulation of trash or drug use a crime, but it can make people feel very unsafe. So we're trying to be smart about how we address things. Our chief has set an aggressive goal of increasing our academy sizes. We have over 100 budgeted police officer roles that are vacant right now because we've struggled to recruit qualified people. So if you know any young people who might be interested in a very rewarding career in public safety, please encourage them to apply. We're also further differentiating our police force. We have a lot of quality of life crime, both involving our encampments and our housed residents and small businesses that would benefit from having a small division that's really just tasked with focusing on quality of life crime and the streetscape. We used to do a lot more of this as a city. We don't have a ton of resources to do this at scale, but we want to start experimenting with what we're seeing other cities do. San Diego, Fresno, Sacramento, other cities are focusing in on getting back to starting to use smart enforcement, smart intervention to create a little more accountability earlier on quality of life issues before they accumulate or even, in some cases, turn into violent situations. And then detention service officers, we have found that with a lot of our for our officers, it's pretty demoralizing to arrest someone for, let's say, dealing or using meth in a city park next to a playground, which is a big deal to us. We want our playgrounds and parks to be safe and open to everybody. So we enforce. Not everybody does. We do. But then to have to go sit at the county jail for 3 hours to get through intake and some of the time be told you got to take the person to Valley Med first to get them checked out for health conditions. But we have officers using more than half of a shift just to book someone at the county jail. It's not efficient. It's not working. It's demoralizing. So we're looking at using sort of a different version of community service officers to have somebody who can do transport and be there through the booking process to allow our patrol teams to get back out into the field. Also on community safety, I'll try to fly through this. Automatic license plate readers, you're all very familiar. We've built a network of nearly 500 that now plug into a real-time crime intelligence center. A quick shout out on that. If you have a camera at home or a small business, you can use Connect San Jose to register it with PD and give them the ability to access it remotely to see what's going on. Really appropriate, most appropriate for a small business, for example, because they need better real-time data to be able to enforce faster and more intelligently. Last year, just to give you an idea, these automatic license plate readers helped us recover over $3 million worth of your stolen vehicles. We also resolved a kidnapping, some home invasion, a number of other crimes. But using technology is helping us do more with less. And then finally, fire risk, obviously for all of us, particularly districts 4, 5, 8, 10, around the periphery where there's that interface with our wildlands, we all watched what happened in LA and, of course, are very worried about protecting our community. We're investing some additional resources in better modeling and understanding what's going on along, they call it the WUI, the Wildland Urban Interface, and doing some more prevention work out there. Last thing I'll just say on public safety is I would encourage you all to engage with your county supervisor and other levels of government, your state reps. The state has given us a lot of tools. You may have seen the governor made a big announcement today around his preferred approach to encampments ordinances that would actually have us abating and moving people around even more than we are. And I think the state's increasingly going to tie funding for things like housing and homelessness to adopting their policies. Well, they've given cities and counties a lot of tools in the last few years. We need to make sure we're using them, tracking their performance, using them well, and using them to have the impact we need. I'll especially point everybody to Prop 1. I'm hopeful that gives us the ability to add hundreds of new treatment beds for addiction and mental illness here in Santa Clara County. Last estimate I've heard, though, current estimated cost per bed is on the order of $3 to $4 million. We're going to need to push both our county and state leaders to not design the perfect, but come up with the good enough because we need scale. Okay. Last two sections. Growing our economy. I talked about attracting jobs. We're seeing a lot of opportunities downtown. We also want to support our small business districts, and I'll talk a little bit about sports, arts, and entertainment. One place to lean into is there's a lot going on with AI. This is the next big platform, obviously. We don't want to fall behind. We want to stay on the cutting edge. So we are making way for data centers. We have more new power capacity coming into the city of San Jose, thanks to CAISO, the state regulator of the energy system, than any other city in Northern California. That's a huge economic development opportunity for us to look at that. Some of the land along 237, Edenvale down in South San Jose and other areas where we can bring in data centers and R&D. We've already seen a little bit of that. AI startups, we now have over 90 AI startups in the city of San Jose, one cluster in D4, North San Jose, and one cluster in downtown. Between them, about $5 billion worth of venture capital investment, including one of the leading robotics companies, Figure AI. We want to attract and support these companies. They're the big job creators and opportunity and economic growth creators of the future. All of that said, really important to us that we invest in workforce. We want to make sure everybody has an opportunity to participate in this economy and not be left behind. And so we're partnering with our library system, San Jose State, the tech, and others to think about K through 12 curriculum. We're setting up a joint San Jose State, City of San Jose upskilling workshop center at MLK. I was just there for a hackathon last week. In fact, our IT team is leading AI upskilling workshops in the city, and city workers are already reporting hundreds and hundreds, actually now thousands of hours saved by using new tools, which is really cool to see. Okay, experience economy, I mentioned this. One opportunity we have, which I think would be great for all of us, be something to take your out-of-town friends and family members to, but also an economic driver that can create more tax revenue for services in all of our neighborhoods, is making downtown a true destination for our region and the urban center for Silicon Valley. And we're seeing that opportunity. We're seeing some great new restaurants open up, EOS and Nick's, Press Room, Rolati a year or so ago. We have started to see more large events. This was a DJ named Fisher, who I had never heard of until about a week before the concert, but brought over 12,000 people out, including trainloads of folks from San Francisco came down and bought tickets for this. And guess what? They all stopped in our small businesses downtown before and after, which is great. And then we're working very hard. I don't have an announcement to make tonight if there are any reporters in the room, but we are close and working very hard with Sharks Sports Entertainment to work out what the future of the Sharks being in San Jose would look like. As you may know, their agreement with the city is coming to a close soon, and we want to figure out the next iteration of their future here, and knock on wood, make sure we keep them here for the long haul. And then in the meantime, as I mentioned, we need to keep an eye on our small businesses. It's great to have a thriving downtown. It's great to attract these AI startups and data centers, but we have small commercial districts all over our city that are big employers and a big part of the community. We have, in the first time in about 16 years, I believe, brought a whole swath of small business corridors together to create business improvement districts. They basically tax themselves a modest amount, pool those resources, and use that pot of money each year to invest in placemaking, marketing, landscaping, power washing the streets, storefront activation, more security, to really make them welcoming places for people. And we're looking at conditional use permits. If you're a small business and you want a CUP in Campbell, it costs $6,000. If you want one in San Jose, it costs over $30,000. So we're digging into why are we so much more expensive and often slower at some of these things, and how do we push ourselves to be more friendly to our small businesses. And then finally, we're getting to the end, I promise. The 2026, next year, we have Super Bowl, March Madness, World Cup, all coming to our metro area. We will be hosting hundreds of thousands of people, and we're starting to raise some money and plan to make sure that, unlike 10 years ago when all the Super Bowl experiences were up in San Francisco, that we actually have some stuff going on downtown. People want to fly into SJC, stay downtown, and spend time and money in the city of San Jose. Last section, housing. I got to tell you, last year was a rough year for housing. First time in memory that we had 0 permits pulled for multifamily market rate housing. We did have just over 600 units of affordable housing built, which is good. We need affordable housing. We're continuing to invest in affordable housing. In fact, we're putting out a NOFA for another $60 million worth of projects. But there's a limit to the scalability there. We need to target that to the people who need it most. But this is heavily subsidized with tax credits and local dollars to the tune of $1 million a unit. And then, of course, once it's built, it's not on the property tax rolls, so we don't get any revenue for the services. So it's important for supporting those who need it most, preventing homelessness, helping our most vulnerable. But I do think we're going to need to think more broadly about how do we also get more of that missing middle housing, where maybe it's blended up to 120% of the median income, or just straight market rate housing. And so we're also pushing ourselves, and I appreciate the council's willingness to look at the math and lower fees in certain areas, speed up approvals in certain parts of town, particularly in our urban villages and downtown, and look at reforming how we implement CEQA, which is the state environmental law, that can make it shockingly slow to build the very housing we want, even on a paved surface parking lot in the heart of downtown San Jose, believe it or not. We are seeing some good news. People have been asking me about this for about 3 years now. Some of our commercial real estate in the downtown core is being converted into residential. Spartan Village is already up with open, building was already there, 700 students living in the heart of downtown. Bank of Italy, knock on wood, should have scaffolding up for a conversion that would hopefully start later this year. And J. Paul has announced that at City View, he's taking a number of Class B and C commercial buildings that are currently empty and at great cost. It's going to spend probably over $600,000 per unit, rehab all those and turn them into apartments and condos, into housing, to help us have more residential density, more housing, and bring some vibrancy and energy to our downtown. So that's a bright spot. We also are investing quite a bit in staff positions and legal support for people at risk of eviction. We are investing in prevention, which is one of the things we committed to in our housing element with the state. And I'll just close on this, and then we'll get to State of the City and your questions. I ran in part on the idea of bringing greater focus and accountability to City Hall. That was kind of the through line of my message to you all. And we have made some real strides there. We've focused in on those 5 areas I listed at the beginning. We have dashboards for 4 of them. We're splitting one out into 2 now, jobs and housing separately. We're getting better at tracking goals, tracking performance, measuring and reporting out. I have argued that we should tie our pay to performance, which is what we do for our city manager, our appointees, and our senior staff. And I think we should be included in that and have that feedback loop where every year we set goals, we measure performance, and we have to issue a report and say very transparently, very clearly, these were the goals we set, this is what we did in the budget, here's how we performed, and have, my proposal is just 5% of our compensation move up and down on a scale based on the percentage of our goals achieved. So we're having an active discussion, debate about that. And then one other thing in the March budget message that was adopted by the council was encouraging our workforce to be back at City Hall at least 4 days a week. We think that our young people learn better, they have more mentorship opportunities when they are in person, and we can serve the public better when we are in person together. There's still flexibility. Some people still need to work from home just 3 days, or work from the office 3 days a week, 2 days from home. There's still accommodations, but we're encouraging everyone who can to be back in person 4 or 5 days a week. With that, I'll close by saying this Saturday, we have our annual State of the City. The speech will be a lot shorter than it was today. We're going to recognize some community heroes. We're going to do a bunch of service projects around Arena Green, our central park in downtown near the SAP Center. We'll have food trucks, music. Unlike last year, there is more shade, more food, more music, more hanging out time, but we will do some service projects. We'll be spreading mulch, painting murals, planting trees. There's a lot of different activities for people of all ages and abilities. We'd love to have you join us. You can RSVP by scanning the QR code. Okay, I'm out of breath and I've nearly lost my voice, but that was an overview of what we're trying to do to better serve you and deliver results for all of you at City Hall. And now I think we have time for your questions. Thanks so much for having me.
All right, if folks have questions, they can start lining up, and just start lining up, and please make sure to try and limit yourself to just one question. I know sometimes we like to ask a follow-up, but let's try to give everyone an opportunity to ask their question.
Thank you so much for all the effort you put in this. I know it's not an easy thing to do, but I just want to know if you've also explored partnerships with business in Costco in LA. They're doing multi-level apartments above a Costco. Have you contacted them or any other business partners such as that?
That's a really interesting concept. We do have a Costco going in District 1, and if I'm not mistaken, I can double check for you. I believe they are putting some parking on top, but I'm pretty sure that was in the final design. So it'll be a little bit denser of a format. You're right. We need to get more creative with our use of the built environment. We have some builders who are willing to do that. We have some who are not. I think we've almost been victims of the amount of land we had historically where people became habituated into sprawling out. But now that we've really filled the valley, for better or worse, I would love to have more open space. I think we're increasingly going to see that people have to start building up, particularly where we have the transportation infrastructure and the walkability to support it. So I can certainly reach out to Costco. I'm not aware of any other projects they have moving forward other than the one that does have parking on top in District 1, but we could talk to other companies.
That particular one was in the Mercury News.
Yeah, that one was. That's right. Yeah. It's a great reminder, though, as we have employers or others looking to build, the more that we can stack, I always encourage them to go denser, particularly when it's near transit and other infrastructure. Thank you.
Hello, Mayor Mann. Yeah, something I've seen over the time of traveling in other cities and across the state, other states, where they encourage good giving. In the matter where many cities post signs at their intersection stores and connection of street areas, they'll put signs, we encourage good giving at such and such a place. Do not give to panhandlers. And it's the idea that they will get these services somewhere else, therefore leaving the malls and the street corners and opening it up for people to feel safe. We always talk about we're closing businesses all the time. Just this week myself, I just go to our local Safeway right here. As I'm walking into Safeway, 2 homeless, they're right in front of Round Table. The place says no one's in there because no one wants to walk by them. I go to Safeway, 2 guys are in front with the dog. I walk through them. The whole place reeked of marijuana. There are so many areas that we avoid because of that. Family comes out and sees like, wow, this is why we left San Jose. To encourage to get the retail business tax money, we have to want to go to these restaurants and stores. But I'm not going to step over 2 homeless guys to get a pizza. And I've seen this work in other cities. They post signs everywhere encouraging everybody, don't give. Give to the city in this number. That therefore they go to the services, leaving the mall. And now the mall is clean and safe.
Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate it. And I think it's definitely something to look at. I know, just to give you an example, St. James Park downtown, we've had a challenge with a lot of unpermitted, it's not even vending, they're not even selling, but people bringing food out, and has really made that park a place where the broader community generally doesn't feel safe going. So we need to better manage this. Number one, would love to get more information about what other cities are doing and learn more and see how it's working. I think that's a great idea. Okay, I'll take a look. Number 2, I really believe that we're spending a lot of money managing this issue, and it's so expensive. I mean, it's estimated that we spend over $65,000 per person per year in our county, per person who's outside. For our high utilizers, folks who generate a lot of 911 calls and emergency room visits, the number's way over $100,000 per person per year, which is why I've tried to be so focused on saying we need a simple strategy. We can't boil the ocean here. More shelter options, more treatment options, and a requirement to come indoors when they're available, and really keep it simple. Now, implementation is harder than that, but very open to looking at those strategies. I also think we got to keep our eyes on the prize on getting everyone indoors, because the cost of managing this and trying to educate the community on what to do, what not to do is really overwhelming. And I hear you on the impacts on retail. I go to my local supermarket and repeatedly have watched people rolling out with a shopping cart full of things they did not pay for. My market one day, I literally walked around the parking lot with my kids looking for a cart because there were none left. So yeah, it's an issue, and we're hearing about it from our retailers every day. So I appreciate your comments. Thank you. Harry.
Hello, Mayor Mahan. Thank you for your presentation. I know it feels weird saying that to you instead of the staff, but anyway, one of the things that you mentioned as a priority is lowering the cost of building for housing. Are there any specific strategies that you're taking? I guess plugging this a little bit is I sent a memo to your office and all the other offices as well, looking at you, David, wherever you are, about lowering some of the barriers to housing, including things like some zoning reform, changing some of the urban design guidelines that might mandate things that add costs that don't necessarily add function, things like that. Are there any other specific strategies you're looking at?
Thank you for the question, and I'll take a look at the memo. I appreciate you being so engaged and actually sending ideas to our office on housing and transit. Yeah, I think there are quite a few things. RAND, for those of you who are interested in our housing crisis, it is an affordability crisis. That affordability crisis is largely driven by a mismatch of supply and demand, and years of underproduction of housing has led to higher costs because it is a supply and demand issue. The one ratio, the one number you need to know is over the last 20 years, our valley created 5 new jobs for every 1 new home we built. And so you see more crowding, you see more homes, particularly on the east side with 2 families to a home. What ends up happening with a shortage, a supply shortage, when you break the market and it can't respond to demand, is that the demand doesn't necessarily go away. People bid up the price, and those who have higher incomes and more resources get the supply, they get what they want, the product, and others end up crowding into a home, moving out of the area, moving into their car. So it is a fundamentally supply issue, and that has a lot to do with our rules. And I think we've done a lot, the state has done a lot on zoning. Right now, as I look at, RAND just did a study, and they showed a couple of really interesting things. Number one, publicly subsidized affordable housing is significantly more expensive to build than market rate. They looked across California, Colorado, and Texas. They found that in Texas, they can build the exact same unit, controlled for unit size, so on a per square foot basis, for 1/3 of the cost. In Colorado, it's about half of the cost. So the delta there, a little bit of that is land cost. Our land is more valuable, but a lot of it is uncertainty, the slowness of approvals, the amount of fees. Our fees are, in many cases, 5 to 10 times higher than other states. And then it gets into a lot of state law and requirements. It's the nuances of the building code, the labor requirements, the environmental requirements, the mitigations, the when you can build. There are just layers and layers of rules and process and fees. So as a state, we really need a blue ribbon commission to go in and be willing to look fresh at almost starting over with the way we're approaching housing. Doesn't mean we need monolithic construction of the same building type everywhere, but we certainly should be able to build up in places like downtown at a much lower cost. And you see cities like Austin and Seattle doing it, and lo and behold, rents come down. It works. So longer conversation, but those are a few of the things I'm looking at. Happy to talk more offline. I'll look for your memo.
Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
So I know what you were talking about in front of the round table. You know, I actually, all that stuff came from the Safeway right next to it. I'm not sure if that's what you're talking about in the CVS parking lot. I was there and I actually picked up all the trash with the little trash picker in front of there that day because it was just too much. Like I just couldn't even just deal with that. It's like, that was really bad. But one question I do have is, what does safety or security in a shelter like look like? What does that look like to you, and what does that model look like, and which shelters would have that model now currently in San Jose?
Yeah, thanks for your question. Most of the 1,400 beds that we're adding this year are private rooms in motels that we are either buying or leasing long-term, or modular units. So they are brand new, fabricated units. They're little sleeping cabins, essentially. They're actually not all that little. Most of the ones we build are over 100 square feet. Many of them have private in-suite bathrooms. We've designed our interim housing to be what we call low barriers. So we have worked with people who have previously been homeless to design solutions that meet them where they are. Specifically, we allow people, when coming into our interim housing and shelter system in the city, to bring and live with their partner, their pets, their possessions, 3 Ps. We do not have a curfew. We don't say you can only leave at this hour, you must be back by this hour. We allow for an extended stay. We don't kick people out after 30, 60, 90 days. In fact, we have had plenty of people who have taken a couple of years to finally find something to move to that has been more permanent. We don't even have a strict sobriety requirement because we have learned historically that imposing a bunch of rules as a qualification for coming indoors actually means people are more likely to just stay out and say no thanks. Now, we do have sober living environments. Salvation Army is expanding a sober living environment. So we want to have options for people. But while we don't allow drug use on site and we don't allow weapons on site, we do acknowledge that some folks coming into our interim housing communities are battling addiction, and you don't get kicked out because you're high or because you come back high. We're focused on services and taking a very kind of human-centric approach to getting people treatment, job training, family reunification, and trying to keep people off the streets and help them move into something more permanent. So that's a description of what we're building. It's mostly private rooms that are either in motels that we've bought or new modular sleeping cabins.
I hear you, but what is secure about that? What is the security behind that?
So no weapons, no drugs on site. There's access control. The entire site is fenced off with a security booth. We have on-site security, and you have a private room with a door that locks.
Okay. Cool, thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi.
Okay. All right, I need to speed up my answers because we still have folks in line. Thanks, Stephen.
All right, I'll
Yes,
keep
sir.
it. So it's great to see the shelters for people living in the street and the parks. There's a whole set of other homeless people living in campers, and they have shelter and they move around. Like
Yeah.
I live in a street where we have it's a residential street with campers, 5, 6 at a time.
Yeah,
Berryessa has a parking, but it's full.
yeah,
So what are we
Yeah.
trying to do and help? Because we're playing a game of whack-a-mole where they move around continuously.
yeah. Yeah, it's a fair question, and you're right. With the vehicles, one of the challenges is that unlike tent encampments, people are more likely to say, oh no, I have a home, this is my home. Challenge is those folks are still on public streets and often still have impacts such as trash in the street, fires, noise, et cetera. And we need to maintain our public space as being open and accessible to everyone. So look, there is no, I want to be really clear, there is no perfect solution, silver bullet. City of San Jose cannot fully resolve this alone. There is no way. Nor can even a handful of the biggest cities in the state, which is de facto what is happening. What we're doing is a few things. We're adding those various shelter options, including safe parking. The Berryessa one is currently full, but the idea behind the system is to continue to expand as we have resources, but focus on reducing costs per person served and increasing throughput. So it doesn't mean we'll have a space for everyone today, but if every month we can graduate 50, 100 people out of the system, that gives us enough throughput. If we can get enough velocity, if we can get enough scale in the system and enough velocity of throughput, we can start to get ahead of the inflow. Because there's not an endless inflow of people who will become homeless, and we have a backlog of years of not doing what we're doing now. So the idea is to start to get throughput and graduate people out. In the meantime, 2 other things I'll just note. One is I have been a strong advocate, but I really need your help on this. And I'm not just saying this. We can't solve it alone. If the county doesn't significantly add inpatient treatment for addiction and mental illness and help us pay, or at least help us pay for services at our interim communities to give us more leverage, and if the state doesn't come in and make every city and county do its fair share for service and treatment, shelter and treatment, we're going to drown in the big cities that are being forced to take this on alone. So we must hold our county and state elected officials accountable for a fair share distribution of shelter by cities and treatment by counties. and really get everybody in on the game to scale up this system. Final piece I'll add, and it's not always popular, but I'm just going to say it because I've had enough experience. I'm out in the encampments every week. I have a cousin who spent a couple years on the streets. I've talked to a lot of people in the recovery community. We have to be willing to also do law enforcement to engage people. And it has to be balanced. I'm not arguing for criminalizing poverty. I'm not arguing for criminalizing homelessness. But there has to be accountability for coming indoors. We have to be able to intervene in cycles of addiction and mental illness. We have to enroll people in the drug and mental health courts. We have to disrupt what's going on with fentanyl, meth, years of untreated mental illness, and chronic homelessness. And unfortunately, there is a subset of our population out there that's service resistant and can be violent. We had a police officer stabbed last week. We had a 15-year-old punched in the face. This happens on a weekly basis in our city, these kinds of things. We have to be able to intervene, enforce a code of conduct, and do our best to hold people accountable for coming indoors and accessing shelter and services. And we have to push the county and the state to do more to expand shelter and inpatient treatment. So if you don't get my newsletter, please subscribe. I've been talking about this until I'm blue in the face, but I'm doing my best to get us to be leaders, but we can't solve it alone.
I support that. I think there's also an opportunity to take out of the residential neighborhoods and into the industrial parks where there's nobody there.
I hear you, and most of our RVs are in industrial areas. We are losing tax base there as well. We have had major employers leave for other cities and states because of the RVs parked in front of their place of business. We had a business the other day walk out, and we lost enough money just from their property taxes a year to hire 2 police officers. So it's a balance.
It's a balance.
I hear you. Thank you. All right, I got to speed up my answers. Go ahead. I'm so sorry. I feel bad for whoever's supposed to go after me. All right. Hi.
Hi. Thank you for shouting out our libraries at the beginning of your presentation and recognizing how important they are to our libraries. I believe in the budget, there's less money for books this year. Would you be able to share a little bit as to why?
Thank you for the question. Well, Don can probably share better than I can why. We are seeing very modest reductions. Don, you may have the number top of mind because you run our library foundation. How much less are we spending on books this year? Okay, compared to last year? Okay, but on a base of what? How much do we spend each year on books? I'm just curious how much of a reduction is. Okay, I will dig into the 1,000-page budget book and try to make sure I understand the number. At the margins, we are slowing or even marginally reducing in some areas, and it's not popular. Let me tell you, even a small cut to any existing service has a constituency that gets very concerned, and I understand that. I'm more worried about next year, frankly, where we're going to have to cut another $50 million, and it's going to be a lot harder. But I will take a second look at the book budget and see if anything is possible. I appreciate your advocacy.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Praveen, and I am wondering about Lundy and King interchange at Commodore. It's supposed to be 4-lane road, but it is still 2 road when the Berryessa BART came in there. And same thing goes to Maybury on the over road of 101.
Okay. That sounds like an issue that we should probably take offline and connect with city staff on road widening and what was promised at the time. Unfortunately, a lot of infrastructure improvements take a very long time, and sometimes the community is under the impression it's going to happen a lot sooner than it does. I'm happy to get more details. That wasn't something we discussed and debated in this year's budget process, at least thus far. But if you email me at mayor, M-A-Y-O-R, at sanjoseca.gov, you can find it on the city website. My team and I will ask our Department of Transportation and try to get some more information on what's going on with both of those roads.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. Hey, Mike.
Hey, great presentation here with giving feedback to the community. I don't have a question as much as I have a seed for thought here. I think you were saying that San Jose supplies a lot of the workforce for Sunnyvale, Palo Alto, Los Altos, and things like that.
Yeah.
Why don't we impose a tariff on those people for we're supplying the housing for these people to work in Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
Let's impose,
Yeah.
they shouldn't be getting off scot-free. because
Yeah.
we are taking the burden of housing and they are not, and
Yeah.
they're taking the burden of business.
Yeah.
I'm very serious about
No,
that.
you're not wrong at all. Look, I don't know that it would be.
You don't have to answer this
No,
question.
no,
but I just
actually,
wanted to see it.
this is not a new idea. Now, look, I don't think it would be a tariff. That's a provocative. That's a provocative idea in this moment in time. I'm kind of for less tariffs at this point, but I do think, though. Look, this is something that's been explored. Only the state can do this. But what you're talking about is a better balancing of property and sales tax revenues across jurisdictions, noting that the cities that are good actors on housing and are the net housing providers are effectively being punished by just the reality of Prop 13. That's not to say we should get rid of Prop 13, because when we set Prop 13 and revenues slowed, we actually increased income tax and capital gains. So we actually are a very high tax state. But the apportionment of it needs to be more equal. That's true for school districts. That's true for cities as well. And you're right. If we're supplying all the workforce for Palo Alto and they have literally 3 times the revenue per person, some of that ought to be redistributed by the state. We need to talk to our state senator and state assembly member to make that happen. It's a great idea.
Hi, good evening. Thank you very much for all you do. I really admire you, Mayor Mahan. So I want to reach out to my county, the supervisors. I'm happy to advocate. I just want to be clear on what is needed. It sounds like treatment centers. And what was the other thing?
Great. Yeah, great question. So the 2 main things that I've requested repeatedly over the years from our county leaders are more inpatient treatment beds, places where people can go. And the reality is, I don't want to overcomplicate it, they come in a lot of different, they call them different acuity levels, different levels of service need, including something we desperately need and don't have, which is secure treatment. If someone is addicted and committing crime and the system doesn't want them to be in jail for an addiction, we need a third space that is not the streets or jail. We need a secure treatment center. We also need low-level residential treatment where someone can be in a group home but have access to counseling once a week. They're called different acuity levels. I don't mean to overcomplicate it, but we need inpatient treatment beds for addiction and mental illness of different types. The other thing that would be immensely helpful would be in our interim housing communities. The city's making a historic investment in building out a system of over 2,000 beds all together over the years now. As we complete this calendar year, we'll be over 2,000 beds. It would be great if, as the city pays to build and operate property management, security, food, and all of that, maintenance, if the county would pay for the case management and the human services, because that's really their area of expertise, is human services, supportive services. I would love to have more cost sharing where they take on case management and human services, and we do the build out and operations and security and maintenance of the shelter system. So those are the 2 things.
Thank you.
You bet.
Good presentation, and thank you for coming to our community. You mentioned, I might not have this number right, but you mentioned about 1,000 units coming online housing, 5,000 homeless. What is the difference in the cost of building housing, the housing units that you described, versus building large congregate shelters? And why are we not looking at large congregate shelters, given the financial condition that the city is in and, in the foreseeable future? I mean, we need to do the math. I would like to see a turnaround to this crisis in my lifetime, please.
Yeah, thank you. It's a great question. Thanks for your advocacy on these issues. A couple of things. We're adding over 1,000 units, but 1,400 beds. Because a lot of people, there are a lot of couples and there are families. So we'll be able to serve more than 1,000 net new people. 1,400 new beds, which we hope to be at least 95% occupancy. We already have in the city system about 1,000 interim beds, and the county has over 1,000 beds. So when you combine it, you have about 3,000 beds, more than that actually. And then the key becomes cost per person served per year. How do we get down those operating costs? We believe we can reduce them by about 20%, which would allow us to serve even more people. Also, what we would call throughput, the graduation rate. Some people fail back out and have to be re-engaged. But most people remain stably sheltered or housed when you offer them a space, particularly if they get their own room. Congregate shelters have very high failure rates, so they're very costly to maintain. The return to the streets is very high. I am not philosophically opposed to having congregate shelter. You are asking the right question. We need to say, what's the need? What are the tools available to us? And how do we design a solution with the resources we have to meet the need? You're right. And that's not a question that most elected officials, most governments are asking. So you keep asking that question. What we have found, though, is congregate shelter, people are more resistant to coming indoors, they're more likely to fail out, and the cost to operate once you get it built end up being basically the same because people need the same services. So I'm not opposed to more congregate shelter. We may have to do things like more safe sleeping sites and really low barrier just to have managed places for people, but we're really prioritizing individual rooms that keep people off the streets and focusing on efficiency and throughput right now in the system.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, it's going to be our last two questions, and I'm going to try to be really succinct. Yes, sir.
Okay. So I heard you say 65,000 per year to support a homeless person.
So it is the cost. I should be clear, and then I'll let you ask your question. It is estimated that we spend over $65,000 per person per year when we leave someone on the streets. But I want to be really clear. I maybe didn't say it quite clearly enough. That is the estimated cost of the public services expended on that person, which includes police response, fire response, emergency room visits that are avoidable, trash pickup, outreach workers, and environmental damage. It does not take into account impacts on quality of life for everyone, small businesses, tourism, and all the rest. So the one little wrinkle there is it's not exactly fungible, meaning just because we get somebody off the streets doesn't mean we suddenly have a bunch of money from police, fire, and emergency rooms. Some of it is fungible, meaning we can capture it and use it for something else. So we don't have to pick up trash if somebody's not there. We save 100% of the money on the trash pickup. We don't really save the money on the emergency room. We just make the emergency room better, more cost-effective, more efficient for everybody.
Mm-hmm. So where I'm going with this is it's very expensive to support homeless people. And San Jose seems to be doing better than a lot of cities at providing the needed services, food, shelter, treatment, and such. But do you ever debate internally at City Hall about when you provide all this, is there a danger of it just attracting more homeless to San Jose?
Yeah, good question and fair question. I've heard it many times. Look, a couple things. Number one, you leave somebody out on the streets, the impacts on our public services, your 911, your police, your fire, your emergency rooms, trash pickup, quality of life impacts, as we just said, very, very high. So to put it in perspective, when the analysis was done 5 years ago, it was an average of $65,000 per person per year. You get somebody into a modular unit, a motel room, that cost is more than cut in half immediately. Cost per year to serve that person goes down to $30,000. We believe we can get it down to $25,000. So almost a 2/3 reduction in impacts. To be fair, though, to be honest about the math, it's not all fungible. Meaning we don't save all the money here to spend over here, for those of you who are accountants. We still have emergency rooms and police and fire. We just make them better. So it does cost money, but we reduce that impact by more than half, closer to 2/3. I would argue that big picture, long term, we can't do it alone. It needs to be a statewide solution. Jurisdictions that have more land, lower cost of building, lower cost of service delivery should be in the game, and the state should be mandating that everybody do their share and that we take advantage of the vast state publicly owned lands that are out there that are not being as well utilized for this problem as they could be. I would also argue we need to do more prevention. And to me, what prevention really looks like is solving this housing crisis by removing more of the barriers to building the housing we need so that we don't keep seeing rents go up faster than income. Because at the end of the day, the single best predictor of the number of people you have living on the streets is how quickly the cost of rent is going up faster than incomes. And that's a supply issue. Because there are a lot of people in, I don't know, my dad's hometown of Nitro, West Virginia, that have addiction and mental illness problems, but you don't see them living in tent encampments because you can rent a little crummy apartment for $500 a month. And here it's $3,500 a month. And so if you're struggling with addiction, mental illness, whatever else, you got no chance at holding down a job that pays you enough to stay in that apartment. So it's a complicated puzzle. I'm trying to do the best I can with the limited tools at my disposal. That might have been the warning that I need to get off stage here. All right.
Okay, thank
I'm going to have to run. You're going to get the last word, ma'am. Thank you, sir.
Hi, Mayor.
Hi.
My question is about something I saw in your presentation on the experience economy.
Yes.
And I think you said about sports. Sharks was one of the sports team you were showing. So I'm just asking, I'm curious about your support for the game of cricket, if you've heard about it.
Oh, yeah.
So it's a growing sport. San Francisco has a team now.
Yeah.
Right now, we all fly to Dallas to watch the games. There's a lot of money in the sports. I just wondered what your interest is.
I love it. No, I have strong interest, and I live down in South San Jose, where we have a very large community of avid cricket players who are playing on all the fields down there all the time. There was some exploration of bringing a cricket stadium and team to the county fairgrounds. My understanding is those conversations at least slowed down. I have not heard any news about that. That was with the county. The fairgrounds are owned by the county. I'm very supportive of the idea. One thing I'll note, if you or anyone else can introduce me to folks who are maybe part of a future ownership group or connected to the league or might have an inside track here, is we're looking at some of that land around SAP Center, Diridon Station, near the future Google campus, which may end up having a different look and feel down the road whenever they do build it. We're looking at that as partly a future sports and entertainment district, whether it's cricket or the Quakes or Bay FC or somebody else moving down there. We'd love to welcome more sports and entertainment and cultural uses in that area, walking distance from Diridon Station.
Let me add something about cricket. I let him answer all the hard questions, but I'll talk about cricket.
For cricket.
But there is a group we're working with that's a cricket league group that has come to our district and asked us about exploring facilities at some of our local parks, and we are working with them in the Parks Department to see what's possible. I can't promise anything or say anything at this point, but we are just having in discussions with some groups in District 4.
There you go. Thanks, Council Member. All right, so I'll just end on this. A lot of what we're talking about here is about priorities. It's about trade-offs. It's about policy. These are tough discussions. I want to deliver results on those focus areas for you. I need your help to ask the tough questions and advocate to your elected officials, council, city level, county level, state level. We got to push every elected to talk about their plans in a data-driven way for how we actually move the needle on these issues. Thank you all so much for being so patient and asking great questions. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, appreciate you. Appreciate it. Let's give Mayor Mahan another round of applause. We appreciate him being here, and thank you, Councilmember Cohen, for also being part of this evening's Budget Town Hall. With that, we come to a close. Reminder that we have our next BCAC meeting on June 9th. Also, our board, we will be meeting next week on Monday at the BUSD District Office. Want to give a thank you to Ellen and Nancy for bringing cookies tonight. We appreciate that. And anyone who would like to contribute to our refreshments next month, just let us know. Have a great evening, everyone. Thank you.
See you.